I'm David Bacon. I'm an independent writer and photographer. Well, I came to the world of photography and picked up the camera when I was working as a union organizer. And actually that even goes all the way back to how I came to Coachella to begin with, which was because I was an organizer for the United Farm Workers Union, and in the 1970s the union sent me to Coachella to help workers organize unions in the grapes and in the dates and the palm trees. So after I worked for the UFW, I worked for other unions, and at the end of that time, and that was, we're talking about maybe a couple decades there, I began taking photographs of what we were doing. A lot of it was we would go on strike. I worked for the Ladies Garment Workers Union and also for a union for foundry workers. And so when we would go on strike, when workers were trying to organize and get the company to agree to recognize the union and sit down and bargain and talk, I would take out a camera and I would take pictures of people on the picket line, for instance. And we would joke with each other and say, well, you're going to take the picture home and show it to your kids and show them that you're really standing up for something. Or 20 years from now, you'll show your grandchildren that when it really counted, you were there. And it was sort of a morale booster, and they were useful pictures also because they could help raise money, for instance, to support people while they were out of work and things like that. So, I began taking photographs that were trying to show this social reality. And at the same time, I've always been very interested in photography and images and art. I went back to school, to night school, to learn, the technical part of being a photographer, but also to learn what the aesthetics were of the image and how to create images that had emotional power to them, and sort of develop my own visual language at the same time as I was trying to use that language, not just to show the reality, but also that images have the power to convince people to do something about that reality. And so those were the combinations of things that went on when I began doing this work. So it's a little different taking photographs of people while they're working, for instance, or photographs of people while they're in a march or a protest, because what's going on with the people themselves in their faces and their body language and what they're doing is different. So in a field, for instance, well, first I have to get into the field to be able to take the picture. So I had to kind of learn how to convince the foreman to let me go and take photographs. And that sometimes, usually I got pretty good at doing that. Of course people can sometimes say no, but you can't really do this without basically getting the person in charge of the field to agree, because first of all, they can throw you out, but also because the workers who you want to take pictures of are all looking at what the foreman has to say about this. And obviously if you are being told to leave the field, workers are going to feel pretty fearful or at least very worried about the idea that you're taking pictures. So you sort of have a barrier that you have to get past there. And then once you've gotten past that, then you have to talk to the people who you want to take photographs with and get them to feel okay about it. And so people are working and you want photographs of people while they're working. Obviously you can't stop people from working and they don't want to stop and you don't want to stop them. So, the idea is to be able to explain what you're doing and do it pretty quickly. And then it's different depending on what the work situation is, but there's a photograph at the beginning of the show here of a man cutting lettuce in a field. And what I'm doing at the same time is I'm kind of crouched down, walking backwards as he's walking forwards towards me, and I have the camera down at the ground, looking up at him and trying to guess what's going to be in the image and taking the photograph that way. And the reason why I'm trying to do that is I want to show his hands, I want to show his face. I want the picture to be really close so that you feel what it's like when he's there in the field. sometimes I have to kind of get myself to start taking photographs. You know, if I'm at a demonstration or something, I have to get myself to take the camera and start taking pictures. You know, in some ways because it's sort of, in a way, easier not to. You know, because it's not just that it's work, it's that you are starting to, you have to put effort into it and you know, kind of make a conscious decision to do this. And so sometimes I have to kind of, it's not exactly talk myself into it, but it's like, you know, going past that line of parents. You know, I have to say, okay, take some pictures, you know. And writing is even worse. You know, I think we all remember from the days when we were in school how you put it off until the last possible minute, that piece of writing you had to do for a particular class. And it's still kind of like that, you know. And sometimes I think also things have to sort of gestate in your mind before you're ready to, this is especially about writing, but sometimes about photography too. You know, things have to sort of percolate in your mind before you're ready to start actually working, doing the work. I guess that I try to live my art in the sense that being a photographer, being a writer, documenting this reality, participating in the social movements and the social context as part of, it's the way I live my life. And you know, I have a family, I have kids, and you know, I don't insist that my kids live their lives the way I live mine. You know, I hope that the ideas that I have some impact on them, like every parent, but you know, we all live in a world in which people make up their own minds about what to think and how to act. So, you know, I deal with the same ordinary things that everybody else does. We all have to pay the rent, we all have to, you know, eat, we all have to live. But in my life, it's sort of done in the context of the work that I do. It's hard for me to imagine, for instance, that I would not do it anymore. I look at myself as a participant photographer, and I also write, so I'm a participant journalist, and in general, a participant artist. And what that means is that I participate in the movements for social justice. I'm not an outsider in that way. I'm in it. And the purpose of the photographs is to help push that movement forward. So I am not a neutral person. You know, what I do is I take sides. And that's also partly what helps to develop, you know, the relationship with people who I'm, you know, photographing. But it's also who I am. You know, I worked for unions helping workers to organize. I think that our world needs to change. We need social justice in this world. We need social change really badly. And the way that happens is when people get together and they are able to organize social movements that force the world to change. And so my role in that is to provide photographs for it, to write about it in such a way that people understand that world, but also are moved to action. You know, I'm not just trying to document the poverty of farm worker communities to make people feel sorry for people. I don't think pity changes anything. So it's important to document the reality, the social reality that's out there. But it's also important to document people's efforts to change it. And it's also important to do this in a way that helps to move people forward. So these photographs in this exhibition here are trying to speak to people who come in and say, okay, we need to change the reality that we're seeing here. And also we can see that there are people who are trying to do that, and we need to kind of join forces here so that we can all together work on that. So the photographs have that social purpose to them. You know, I'm not trying to say that they're all kind of like leaflets, or they're all just, that they have no intrinsic aesthetic qualities to them, because I believe that they have to be both. You know, I have to work as an artist and have respect for the art and the craft that I work with, and try to produce art, in this case photography, photographs that work. I guess that's what I would say about them, that work.